If you want to qual to every solo Victory Cup finals for the rest of time, you've come to the right place. I'm going to start out this video by giving you some strategies for early and mid game, and then end it by breaking down some games. So starting off with off spawn. The typical advice that anybody you ask will give you is land somewhere on repeat until you know the ins and outs and keep on going there for every single game of every single tourney. But I have a secret strategy specifically for solos, and I've been using this for the past couple years. The idea is you pick a spot on the map that has lots and lots of buildings. Whether it's a huge name location like Mega City, or it's a cluster of buildings in a non-name location. Typically when landing off spawn, you want to get the best drop for a specific chest and just always land on that chest. But my strategy is different. Pull out your glider just a little bit early so that you can scout all around you and see where people are landing. Once you see where people are going, you can curve to a building that is uncontested. That way you are never 50-50ing off spawn, and you'll survive more off spawns by doing this. Additionally, if you scout around you and see where people are going, you can rotate to other buildings that you know are uncontested. That way you can usually get enough loot for the endgame without actually having to fight. This is an example. I had 2 games left in this tourney and I still needed a lot of points because I was W key in my first games. So I did the strategy. I was aiming for these far buildings back here, but I saw somebody was contesting me there, so I curve and I start scouting around me and I noticed nobody is going this castle. I could have also curved to these buildings, these buildings, these buildings, and even this location here. I had so many options, but I saw the castle was unlooted, so I went there. Do this strat off spawn and you'll make way more end games, and if you make end games, you should be able to qual to the finals. Now let me tell you my mid game strat. Caches with all that crazy loot always spawns in at the start of the 3rd zone. And the caches always spawn within that 3rd zone. So if you want to up your chances of getting a cache, listen up. First off, try to make sure you're at least a decent way into the 2nd zone. If you're still out in the storm in the 2nd zone, the cache is going to spawn so far from you and you're not going to get it. So make sure you rotate a little bit early and you'll be more likely to pull the cache. Additionally, position yourself either near mud or rifts right before the cache is about to spawn. So right at the end of the 2nd zone, get in a position where you have rotates to get to the cache fast. Do those 2 things and you'll be way more often to get the cache. Now when rotating in the mid game, if you want to avoid fights, take these tips. Don't rotate to the center of the zone. If you rotate to the center, you're going to have potentially people on every single side of you, so try to avoid that. Instead, rotate along the outskirts of the map and try to get to the dead side of the zone. The dead side of the zone is going to be the side of the zone with the least amount of people. So in this situation, the zone is pulling far to the east. If one of these first few zones pulls far in one direction, it's going to continue pulling in that direction for the next few zones. So right off the bat, as I see this zone, I know it's going to continue pulling to the east, so I want to get to that far east side of the zone because that's going to be the dead side. The west side of this zone is going to be hot because everyone from the west side of the zone is rotating to this edge of the map. So if I'm landing up here, I would just rotate along this top side of the map until I can cut into the far east side of the zone. That is exactly how I would rotate this to stay on the dead side and avoid mid-game fights. The same thing applies if it's far south or far west or far north. Let's look at one more example. Let's say it's pulling far to the southwest here and I'm on the north side of the map. The best way to get to the dead side of the zone is rotate far along this west side of the map. I'm not going to cut straight down towards the center because that's how you run into a lot of people. Everyone always comes to me saying, I keep getting keyed and third-partied in solo cash cups. Take that dead side rotating tip and apply it every single game. The last mid-game tip, if you want to avoid fights and qual to more solo cash cup finals, is if you see an enemy ahead of you on your rotate, rotate the other way, don't go towards them, and don't shoot at them, otherwise they're gonna key you. Solo cash cup players are way too aggressive, so if you're shooting at someone, they're more than likely gonna key you. Now I know those tips are a little bit boring, but I'm telling you, those tips will qual you to the solo finals every single week. Study them, master them, and apply them, and you'll qual. But you do need to know a little bit about late game. I'm gonna quickly break down a game from opens and one from finals. Let's start with the opens. This first zone pulled far from me, but I had mud nearby, so I just rotate to that, sprint, and spam crouch. Doing this makes you move so fast, and I was able to get all the way across the zone without getting shot. and I position right on top of mud so that I have it for my next rotate. I pulled the next zone, but the zone after that pulls far. There's people ahead of me on this rotate, so I wait, and as soon as I see him rotating, I immediately go, no hesitation. Timing rotates is something that takes a while to understand, but I feel like this one was pretty straightforward. The next zone pulled far, and I realized that everybody is on the back edge of zone right now. So if I rotate immediately, I should have a free rotate with nobody ahead of me. Sure enough, I was able to drop down this hill so no one behind me can see me, and I just rotate a good distance into the zone. These people were ahead of me on my rotate, but they were distracted fighting each other, so I just built up over them while they were distracted. As soon as I get positioned, somebody just tries spraying in my box. Being aware in endgame is one of the most important things, constantly being aware that someone might jump in. But when he doesn't get in, he walks into the other box and gets in a 50-50. And that was the freest opportunity to third party. I actually ended up qualling just off those 2 kills alone. As I'm rotating here, I hear footsteps behind me, so I just jump while sprinting to check behind me. I don't lose any momentum by doing this, and I gather information. I see that they're not on my lair, so I don't have anything to worry about. I just keep working forward. While I'm doing these rotates, a lot of times I'll shoot while sliding or while in the air. That way I don't lose momentum and I damage opponents. I end up falling right against this guy's wall here and almost choke because I flipped my cone wrong, but I get out of there. And this next rotate is what wins me the game. The zone pulls far, and I get to the side of the zone that has no players on it. You can find the dead side of moving zones by doing this. If the zone pulls from here to here, that means everyone's going to stop on this edge, and the opposite side of the zone is going to have no players on it. So then if the zone pulls over here and you get to that side of the zone that has no players on it, you're going to be on the dead side of the moving zone. And this same exact trick applies every single zone. But that's how I found dead side, and I was able to just free rotate to the front of zone. Once I get to the front edge, I just make a box and I end up spraying forward at people and get a free kill. Once I get that kill though, I just continue to rotate on this dead side. It's super free. And here's a little trick for you. At the edge of the zone, the front edge, there was a hill. I built up from that hill and took high ground. If you're ever ahead on your rotates and it's pulling up, a lot of times you can just build up and spray back at the other people who are on high ground. Everyone in this lobby was shambles though, and it was just the freest win of my life, really. I just kept pressure on from above and picked up a few kills and won the game. Not much to learn after that. But let's look at the start of this finals game. Right here, the zone pulls pretty far and it pulls towards a ton of people that are based up. But the rotate should be easy as long as if this guy in front of me goes. But this kid would not move. In fact, he was so stubborn that he starts just shooting at people behind him. So I got a free fry and I pushed that. While I'm pushing up, I get his wall one shot here before I pull out my pickaxe. That way I can get in his box as fast as possible and I get the free kill. I use the mats to get ahead a little bit, that way I don't have quite as far to go to rotate, and then I scout. I see somebody rotating from behind me, so I'm not going to edit out right now, otherwise that guy's just going to continually shoot me the whole rotate. I wait for him to go and then follow his rotate. Following people on their rotates is a good way to avoid getting hit because a lot of times people are just going to shoot the first guy, and you'll be able to tell if the rotate's free or not. I don't follow directly behind him though because I don't want him to turn and hold me. Instead, I rotate off towards the edge a little more behind all these builds. There are a ton of people based up in front of me, but I have all these builds as cover. So I just keep on rotating along this edge behind the builds, and eventually I get past all the congestion over to the dead side and nobody even saw me. I continue to rotate all the way around this edge because the zone pulls max and I want to stay on the dead side of zone. That other side was so congested, which is why I wrap all the way around the zone over here. I have a free rotate for most of the way. I use these line of sight breaks like the old builds in the mountain to work my way in with nobody seeing me. It's super important to understand line of sight and knowing how to break it. But eventually, as I get closer to the zone, it gets a little bit awkward. I'm rotating right by this guy's box, but the good news is he's in the middle of a fight and he's distracted. So I just keep on going. But eventually I start to feel a little bit of danger from behind, so I pause and build. That way I can scout around me to make sure I'm safe. And that's when I see a free rotate to the front of zone and I just slide right on in. I felt like those rotates had a lot of value, so I wanted to throw them in this video. But the rest of that endgame can be found on my main channel in my video called I Got Put Against the Pros. I hope this video helps you guys make the solo finals. Let me know if it does and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.